Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And today we are going to be doing English, the boss battles for Jubilee 29. Currently sitting fairly good. I'm not really that concerned. We're technically rank 2 because there's a bot, so I think we're good after this video is done. I don't really think I need to push anymore. But Boss Battle 1, they're both 10 turns. Boss Battle 1 does have 3 enemies, so you do have to watch out for that. And then you start with a Yom, Orb Change, or Isis, depending on who you bring. And then Boss Battle 2 is just Rimuru by himself. He doesn't really attack that much either. Like, he does like 3 attacks sometimes, and sometimes he does his AoE ult, so there's 3 stacks of Vengeance, but it's not like you're getting like 6 a turn, like the Mock Jubilee. And then it has a special convert hand, which, Triya, Valentine, if you want to bring like 2 single orb changers, I guess you can. I didn't, though. But the funny thing about these boss battles, before we get in, is that I feel like they're not really tuned for the whole concept of vengeance. Like, this 140 score is not with any meta units from this current meta. And then Boss Battle 2, since there's only one enemy, I ended up, like, I did use the Vengeance team, yeah, but instead of bringing, like, Yom and a bunch of defense, I just went full offense with, Shuna and Veldora. And then we also brought Raphael, but we just took Yom out. Like, get out. We put Isis in there. So, it's like, if you don't have the DPS quote-unquote units for this meta, like, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, yeah, you'll get probably a higher score because you do a little bit more damage, but most of your damage is coming from Vengeance on Boss Battle 2. And I haven't really found a better team. I have worse alternative teams for you, which are definitely a lot worse, but, it is what it is. If you don't have them, you don't have it. But Boss Battle 1 is the funny one, so let's just go ahead and get started there. Alright, so this is, the quote-unquote meta team. Now, I got a better score using this than I did bringing the other, like, Vengeance units, so Shuna and Veldora, because honestly, since there's 3 enemies here, there's a lot of hits coming in generally, I needed more points, right? And if you have 4 Vengeance characters, that's great, but if you don't have any green orbs, then you're not really getting any points to use 3 stacks of Vengeance every single turn. So I found that this team runs more efficiently because we have just a butt ton of orb changers, and it will allow us to get max points and 6 greens, and we'll have the boosted green buff from Isis. That means we'll have the resets happening all the time with Velzard. So it just runs, I think, more efficiently, even though we have the capacity to put less stacks on. I think we end up actually getting more stacks than when I tried to bring the full meta, just by virtue of having more points to play with. So turn 1, it's built for an Isis orb change. Unfortunately, I don't think I brought... Do we reset this? We do reset this, alright. So I do start with the skill point hand, so we have 42 skill points, so we can use both Isis's buff and orb change turn 1. That's why we had to skip forward a little bit. And then we're just going to bring in Veldora, and we'll probably just run this as much as possible, because we have 2 orb changers, we have both of our Vengeance units, and, this is pretty much going to be it for 10 turns, so here we get really lucky. So it's literally just like 4 skills every single turn, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. And then reset with Velzard, and then do that over and over and over and over again until you get a turn where you would like to have like the Isis buff or something, or maybe there's a sad time where you don't have a Velzard to reset and you do have to swap some units out to orb change. But other than that, I mean, it runs like this. But like, yeah, that turn, great, we got 1 hit. So that's why I feel like this isn't really optimized, because they don't hit you that much. Right, Gabru has an AoE ult, so that's 3 stacks, and then sometimes they hit you, but like, yeah, that first turn, they just buff themselves, and then Geld comes in for 1 measly hit. So, like, stacking Vengeance based on their hits doesn't actually work overly well here, because you just can't do it. So you have to have constant stacking of Vengeance from your side, and again, You can bring all 4 units if you have them, but will you have the points to use all 4 stacks? Like, sure, you can get lucky, like on this turn, where we have 100 points, we only need 1 orb change. I could have, like, a different unit in the back, and I could get 3 stacks of Vengeance here. 100%, it can happen. But I found more consistency bringing a butt ton of orb changers and getting pretty much guaranteed 2 stacks of Vengeance every single turn from the start of game to now. So you can do what you want. This is not my highest scoring team though, and not by a long shot. Oh no. We saved that for the next section. This is just to show you the meta and how it does here. But like I said in the beginning, like my highest score, the 140k, is not with this team. So you can use this. It'll get you a decent score. It won't get you tippity top score. So that's why is that a thing? Like, I get it. We have a protector who can do extra damage against water already. Yeah, so it does give us options, which is good because options is good, right? If you're constantly locked into a Jubilee where you can only use one team, and it's the new team that you maybe didn't summon on because we're literally a month and a half away from fucking anniversary, or maybe even a month based on, you know, that time frame of the general banner pool. Do you really want to summon right now? I don't really know. So the fact that there is another option, and it's the higher scoring option, is really good for a lot of other players to be able to take part in that. So we brought Trya. She can convert almost everything depending on how the hand works out, so that is just her power right there. Velzard being able to reset every skill is really, really good, and I don't think I can ever understate that power, because I do bring counter Benimaru in here, and it is not as easy to do, right? So that's going to be the 3 things, is that it's going to be the meta team, it's going to be the counter Benimaru team, kind of looking the same thing with both Yom and Raphael, assuming you have Raphael. If you don't, then just bring somebody else. But it works, right? We're doing good Vengeance damage here. We are up to 48 stacks. We're 1.4 million, 54 now, and we still have 4 turns left. So I don't think we need to watch the rest of this because it's literally just stack on stack on stack. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna fast forward to the very end. So 2 turns left. We're at 72 stacks, and again we have a full hand, but we don't have Velzard to reset here, which is unfortunate. So, but since we have full points, we can just use the 2 stacks at, you know, a higher cost and still get everything out of it. So, not much we can do about that. So we end at 82 planted, and then they're going to hit us a couple times, and it's going to be like 86, 87 stacks. So I have yet to get to 99 stacks with this team, right? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So we're up to 86, and then 5 million damage. 5 million. Respectable. Very, very respectable right there. Gets us 127.9. But, as you saw, my high score is 140. And it's not by using Vengeance. So let's go ahead and bring that team up. Alright. This is what we're doing. We're stacking, right? The blues are only nerfed by their damage, not their gauge. So, we can still get a butt ton of protection and points out of the blue orbs. They're just going to do less damage, which is fine, because we're going to make up for that with big-time nukes. Diablo, Fount of Wisdom Diablo, does give the additional damage buff against water enemies. So if we bring primary, Fount of Wisdom units that are AoE, like Shizu and Rimuru, we can do a lot of AoE damage with the buffs that we can put on. We have Guy here for the green and kind of orange orb changing and the alt buff. The important thing here is to note that you do not want to crit these bosses. They have a lot of crit resistance, so on the nuke turn, you want to have Shizu and Rimuru in the back, use Guy's buff, and then bring them in. Because if you crit, you're going to lower your damage by like 500,000 or something like that. It's really bad. I made that mistake the first run, so don't do that. Swimsuit Shizu's here because she's able to swap the alts out for a blue orb, which is what we want, and the weakness damage buff because both Shizu and Rimuru are getting that extra damage from Diablo. It will count towards that. Trainee is here for more orb changing and to rush the ult, and to give Shizu that 15% wind buff on her nuke turn, because she's wind. Shizu is our nuker, she's wind. We are also using her attack buff to stack on her and Rimuru, that 15% Fount of Wisdom and World of Fantasy attack buff. We'll hit both of them, and we'll just make them hit harder and harder and harder every time. And then Rimuru is our primary orange orb changer, while having that massive physical buff and debuff. So ideally, you want lots of stacks of Diablo, lots of stacks of Shizu, and an EX ult for both Rimuru and Shizu on the nuke turn. So let's go ahead and let's zoom this back up. We can probably go a little faster here. So turn 1, we don't have the green orb changer, so we're just going to send the 4 greens and call it good, and then pray that we get good RNG for turn 2, where we only need like 1 orb change or something. We have enough for 2 in case we need it, but we're just going to swap out. So Shizu comes in. Shizu, since she is on Fount of Wisdom and she has type advantage, she is the primary nuker. So you really need her ult, and you need to make sure that she gets it. So we got really good RNG here. We can use Trainee's orb change, and we can use a stack of Shizu. It's important to get multiple stacks on both her and Rimuru. So far, like, there are better runs than what I'm going to show you, because people got more stacks of Shizu on. Because, 15, 30, 45% extra attack is a really, really big deal. So it is important to use those as often as possible, which towards the end of the fight, when they both have EX ults and I don't want them up front, I kind of neglect. So that's why my score isn't as high as some others, but it can be. The potential is there. I just need to redo it, but I don't really want to, because we're guaranteed my 600 crystals now. So, but I mean, it's still a 10-turn fight, so you have 10 turns to build up. I think I end with like 12 Diablo stacks. Like, that's crazy. Because normally the Jubilee for the Fount of Wisdom team went 8 turns, right? 2 less, and you had like 7 stacks of Diablo, 8 stacks of Diablo, not 12. So you have a lot of points to play with, a lot of ult resistance that you've dropped on the enemies. And because we have 2 AoE units, it just means that we're going to hit crazy hard. Unfortunately, the enemies have that bigger defensive debuff against magic units, and we're running physical. So if they were magic, that'd be a lot better. I mean, we could bring Goddess of Destiny Soka, but I don't think she's on Fount of Wisdom. Let me go check that really fast, because I could be mistaken. Soka is not on Fount of Wisdom, so yeah, we can't really use her. But, it is what it is. Rimuru is here to give us that physical buff, and then Shizu is our, our stacking unit. So we've gotten really, really lucky here with orbs. We now have the EX ult for Shizu, really, really good. But we, here we need to also continue to use her attack buff as much as possible to give us maximum power. So we're up to, I think, 4 uses of that, right? So 15, 35, 55, 75, 95. Yeah, so we're up to 5 stacks of Shizu. Oh, no, we're up to 4 stacks of Shizu, sorry. 4 stacks. So definitely want more than that, but now that she has an EX ult, it's like every time I bring her in, she's gonna take an orb away. And while we do have Shizu here, if we want both units up front, that means that someone's gonna have their ult swapped, and someone has to go to the back, but then like now it becomes like a musical chairs kind of thing, where how do we buff both units without having to send 5 blues and just hold an ult? It becomes kind of weird like that. So also, we don't really get a chance to put the extra wind buff on Shizu until like the very end, because we can't bring her in, because I want all the orb changes. I want Rimuru to get his EX ult. But here's like a turn where we could have used the stack, right? We could have brought her in, but we didn't. And now here becomes like, we need to use more stacks of Shizu in these last couple turns, but we just don't. Which it's fine, because it costs a lot of points. It costs a lot of points. So I think we use the 5th stack on the nuke turn, but now we gotta remember that we need Rimuru's EX ult, and then he needs to go away, because he cannot be up front for the nuke when Guy is up front, because they cannot crit. We do not want them to crit. So he now has the EX alt, and it's because they're sealed, right? You can see the red debuff on our characters. It's Pierce Seal and Crit Seal. So get them out of there. So now Rimuru is going to go to the back. We have a trainee alt, cool, whatever. I should have sent it this turn instead of holding it because I realized that Shizu has to be up front for the nuke because we need to give, unless you find a way to get both EX alts and use their two-turn buff like early, like that is definitely a possibility. But I was kind of hoping we could use the trainee alt as well, just for a little bit extra damage, even though we wouldn't do that much because it would only have the alt damage buff. But we swapped it anyways, so we got more points out of it for one more stack of Diablo. It is what it is. So here, we'll slow it down a little bit. So let's pause and we'll bring it back down to human viewing levels. Oh god. So turn one, or one more turn. We're only at 117 total damage done right now, but we are pretty much ready to go. So we're going to use the guy buff now when none of our nukers are up front, so we don't have the guaranteed crits on them. And then we'll bring in Shizu and Rimuru. We're going to bring Shizu in first because we have enough points to use the wind buff from trainee, because Rimuru technically has a higher attack stat naturally, and since we've been stacking them equally, it's, you know, he would get it, and that's not what we want. So we're going to bring Shizu in first, we're going to use the trainee buff, and why do I feel like we're going so slow? No, we're at 100% speed, alright, whatever. And then we'll bring Rimuru in, so he can get the weakness damage buff, and he can get everyone can get the physical buff. And it's unfortunate that we're going to have a full hand of Shizu orbs, but almost a full hand, because it's definitely not what you want. Fire Shizu is type disadvantage. Good thing is, she can't die, right? Everyone has grit, so I mean, that's one good thing about this Jubilee, is that you can take a lot of damage, and you can still have your entire team, which is great. I could have used Trainee's orb change. I wasn't sure if I'd have enough points there, and we definitely did have barely enough, but it is what it is. So we'll do the Rimuru ult and then the Shizu ult. They both lower defense. Rimuru does 895, so almost 900,000 each. She does 1.4 million damage, and then, you know, stupid little swimsuit Shizu doesn't do anything. But there we go, 7 million right there. A lot higher than my, 5.5 million for the meta team. So if you have the capability of using this team in some way, shape, or form, and you don't have the new meta, it'll probably actually work out a little better for you. So yeah, 7 million damage, 140.09 is my current high score for this stage. It's still like third or something, but whatever. The only way I could improve it is to get more Shizu stacks, right? 30% extra attack, 45% extra attack will go a long way towards increasing your total damage done. Because I've seen, you know, Shizu hit like 1.5 million, Rimuru hits like 1 million, so there's another like 600,000 damage right there that I'm missing out on. So it's definitely doable if you have this team, and I recommend using it over the, you know, the Vengeance meta, because it's just going to get you a higher score. But let's try a sad alternative team now. Alright, we're going to go double speed on this one, because it's just the same as the Vengeance team, right? It's, you know, stacking. We're going to bring Protector Benimaru, who resets skill cost, gives us extra skill points on greens, and counter attacks. So we can do a little bit extra damage from those counters. It's not a lot. It really just slows your game down, because then we'll gameplay loop, because you gotta wait for all the counters to come in. But we're bringing a butt ton of orb changers. We're bringing Raphael as well, along with Shizu. So we have a single orange orb change with Shizu. Both her and Raphael are on Fount of Wisdom, so they will benefit from the attack stats. Now, if you don't have Shizu and you don't have Raphael, you could bring, like, I don't know, Shuna or something, or not Shuna, but just another Wind character. You could bring like Wind Diablo if you wanted to, and Raphael, you could swap it for just another orb changer. You know, this team is all about stacking Vengeance with your own skills. So if you only have Yom, you gotta work with it, right? You just gotta replace it. So you bring either higher quote-unquote damaging units, or you just bring more orb changers and, you know, ensure that you can get full hands of greens every single turn and just 1 stack of Vengeance every turn. This team, we're going for 2 stacks of Vengeance every turn, but we're going to go at hyperspeed because it's even slower than like the other teams because of the counterattacks. So And turn 1, we do have Isis. We're not running the skill point units, so we're just going to use the orb change and then move on with our life. And actually having Shizu here is really nice, because her single orb change does come in quite handy more than once, where we have like 2 blues and an orange, and like I don't want to bring Triya in, but Shizu can sit here, like, yeah, right here, right? We can use her, and we can use Yom, and then we have enough points to use both stacks of Vengeance, and we'll call it good. And then Benimaru will reset all those skills, and then he'll give us counterattacks, which Shizu has a lot of orbs, and she's wind, so her counters will do more damage, and there we go, 4,000, whoop-de-doo. But here we go, so our first hand where it doesn't quite work out for us, but we can use her orb change, and another stack, and then we can just bring Triya in and convert those two, whether it be the steel or her special convert, doesn't really matter. Both of them work. And then we can bring Isis in and use the green buff, and then we'll kind of just run with it, and another stack of Vengeance. So that's pretty much how this team runs. You know, you are not going to get as many stacks of Vengeance as the full meta, because you don't have Velzard constantly applying them when you get hit. But it still works out. I mean, like, okay. It's definitely an alternative team where you're not running at full power, and I would not expect a super good score out of here. But if it's what you got, it's what you got. So I'm not even gonna stay here very long. I think you guys get the gist of this team. If you are upset at me that I skip around in this one so much, then you can tell me in the comments and I'll stop skipping around in future videos. But I think you get the idea of how this team runs. So let's go all the way to the final turn. And we end up with 33 stacks plus another 2 here. So that's going to be our primary power. So we'll use Benimaru to reset one more time. We can use Shizu and then 2 more stacks. So we're going to end at 39 stacks of Vengeance. We're at 1.9k damage. Now we're over 2 million, which isn't bad. But again, it's not the 7 million that we did with Fount of Wisdom. So there we go. Counterattack, counterattack. And then the Vengeance kicks in, and it puts us at 2.5. So again, it's not great. Like 80k versus 140k. Definitely a very, very big gap right there. But if it's what you got, it's what you got. So that's it for Boss Battle 1. Let's move on to Boss Battle 2. Alright, Boss Battle 2. This is the team I used for my current high score. We're going with damage now instead of defense. Still have Velzard for Vengeance. Raphael's here for Vengeance and Guard. Triya, because we have our turn 1 Orb Convert, is built on a special conversion. So she'll be useful here, both for that and then future. Shuna is here for our quote-unquote DPS, because she can use her stat swap and rush her EX ult and all that. Isis is here as our primary blue orb changer instead of Yom, because she's got the green buff, and we don't need 4 units that do Vengeance here. I want extra gauge. And then Veldora, is sub DPS, while giving the extra ult damage for, up to 5 stacks with the Vengeance. So we're going, half DPS, half, what would you call it? Half kind of turtle, but it works fairly well because, the EX ult, again, this team isn't the biggest outright damaging team, but it does help out. It's just that this Rimuru doesn't really attack us that often, so it's kind of hard to get the other Vengeance stacks from Velzard. But here, turn 1, we brought the skill point units, so now we can use both the orb change and the buff. So now we're going to be looking real nice. And then we'll just try and live with all 3 of our Vengeance units up front. We'll send Shuna last because she's got type advantage. She does 10k up to 20k, 21k. And then, there we go. Oh, we don't have an orange orb changer. Man, I really wish the new Veldora was an orange orb changer and not stupid weakness damage buff, but it is what it is. I gotta make use of it. Do I quit here? Oh, I do quit. Okay. So let's just jump in again. So, okay. There we go. I need to pay attention more to these. Okay. So, oh my god, look. It's just a repeat. It's deja vu. Alright, that also looks terrible, but I guess we can work with it. We'll bring Triya in for Shuna. We gotta use 2 orb changes here, so I think we'll start rushing Shuna's ult as a stack, and then we'll bring Triya in. we'll use the orb change for her, and then we'll reset everything, and then we'll use the other convert, and then we'll leave her in because he's about to AoE, and since we can't die here, I'm really not overly concerned about leaving her in the field of fire if I have to. It'll just, take away slightly from our ending scores, the damage taken, and remaining HP. But, once you get down to 0, the remaining HP, you can't go any lower than that. So she took it actually like a champ, though. That didn't do very much damage at all. So we're fairly lucky there. Just one orb change here, so that means we can use 3 stacks of Vengeance. 1, 2, 3. So there's, those lucky turns where we can get as much as physically possible. And we're going to send all these. We're going to let Velzard chill. No, we're going to use her because Shuna doesn't have it. Alright. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Awesome. 44k, 54k. Like, yeah, they don't do a lot of damage on their ults. But it does help out here and there. And we do also have 3 units that stack Vengeance. If you don't have Veldora and Shuna, you can bring Yom. If you have Raphael and Velzard, yeah, just bring Yom and some orb changers. Call it good. Don't worry about doing super huge, Vengeance damage here. Just use what you got. This just works out because they're DPS, and it just gives us that extra little bit of power that we can call from our team. But if you don't, I don't recommend people summon for Veldora and Shuna at all. Right, because apart from this specific stage right here, I don't think they're going to see much use. They're just wonky units that aren't really going to fit well in other teams, except maybe Veldora on the Warriors Mind team. Like, it's realistically the only thing I can think of, but even then he's not optimized. I still have to do his showcase video in that stage as well. So, I mean, we'll test him out this coming week or so, but yeah. It is what it is. Like, do you guys really need to see the rest of this? Because we got 6 more turns, and this video was already going to be probably pretty long. So I think we're going to skip ahead as well. So down to turn 2, or 2 turns left. We'll ult here, nuke there. We only have 98 skill points, which is unfortunate, but I think we can actually make it work. Because we have 3 units that stack Vengeance, right? So we'll just bring that all in. We do have Shuna's EX ult. We did use her stat swap earlier, so she is ready to go. Now, the thing is, like, do I use 3 stacks of Vengeance, or do I use the massive buff right here? And I probably, in hindsight, should have used 3 stacks of Vengeance. More than that, but it is what it is. So 50%, so he's capped out. We'll go ahead and use the we'll use the guard for any follow-up, and then we'll use the extra thing. Or we could seal. Or we could seal his crit and his pierce and his attack, because he does have all those buffs right here, and he would hit us pretty hard. And so we go with more stacks. 1 more stack. Maybe I'll try this again, but instead of doing, like, the big-time buff. Because, yeah, we did Shunid 300-something thousand, like, whoop-de-fucking-do. Ooh. We could have had 9 more stacks of Vengeance. So we end up doing 3.7 million damage right there total, for a final score of 173.3. And I think I'm very close to where Nature is. This is his team, by the way. Shout out to Nature. But yeah, I mean, it works. It does a lot of damage over time. So let's now come in with some alternative not great teams. Okay, sad alternate team 1. Veldora and a dark team with Magic Wind Diablo as our primary damage dealer. So Veldora does reset skill costs. He increases our skill cap every time we use him, and he does stack that magic damage, which everyone on this team is magic. So it will help us do a bit more damage here and there overall whenever we use him throughout the fight. We've got Valentine Octagram here to give us that permanent 80% ult damage because she is skill fused. If you don't have her skill fused, it's 60%. Oh, well, we don't do that much damage anyways. Isis is here for the orb change and the buff. Tria's here for the orb changes. Diablo is our quote-unquote nuker. And then Milim is here for more orb changing, more nuking, and an ult buff when we decide to use it. So, like, in paper, this team would be good, but I promise you it's not. It's just not good. We don't do a lot of damage. we end up finding out that I don't want to crit here. And also, if you're thought of, why didn't you use the Fount of Wisdom team? Well, it's because the blues are nerfed. 80% forever, so we can't really stack with an 80% nerf to the blues. So, not really an option to bring that team. But we do have a lot of orb changers, though. We have Isis, Trya, and Milim doing all of that, so between that, we should always pretty much have a full hand of greens, unless we have an ult. So it works, you know, it works well in that aspect. It's just that we're looking for damage, and we don't have any Vengeance characters here, and it's just that, you know, this is an old team, right? Diablo's old, Milim is about to be a year old, so it can't hang. They're not EX units at all, so their stats are not like Milim is 120, right? She's got decent stats for an older unit, but overall, we take a lot more damage because they don't have that extra defense from like being on the category. It ends up being not that great. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to stick around too long in this team. This is like I have to break the glass because I don't have anything else to use because I skipped all these metas and I have nothing, and I just want to play this and get the S rank and then move on with my life. So I'm going to skip ahead now. So 2 turns left. We're under 1 million damage still, which is not great if you can't tell. But we do have, you know, the green buff going. Diablo needs the attack buff, but we're not going to use it. He already has the attack buff anyways. But I learned that you shouldn't crit. So Diablo's second skill for his crit, I used it on the nuke turn a couple turns ago. Yeah, it didn't work out very well because Reamer has crit resistance, so it kind of cut our damage. Oh well, it is what it is. So 1 turn left. We do break 1 million after this turn, so whoop-de-doo. It doesn't really mean much though. So 78,000, 12,000, 25,000, and then Rimuru hits us. Diablo technically died. Isis technically died. And our score is 40,000. Far cry from the 173, but we do get an S rank. So that is sad alternative team number 1 if you have to use it. Let's now watch the last team, which is sad alternative team number 2. Alright, the final team of the video, sad boss battle team number 2. We're going with counterattacks again. So kind of like what we did with the first fight, this time we are bringing Dark Milim instead of Raphael. So this is assuming you just don't have Raphael or Velzard or anyone else but free-to-play Yom. Even if you don't have Shizu, you bring somebody else. But Benimaru, again, resets skills, gives the counterattacks, that's a little bit extra damage, and gives the extra skill points on greens. And with this team, literally everybody is an orb changer. So, hey, at least we'll have full hands. Yom will be stacking Vengeance, albeit very, very slowly, because we can only use it once per turn. So, you know, it's 3 free-to-play units, an old unit that's currently on a banner right now, which you may or may not have pulled from like the free tickets, or if you did 5 multis, whatever. And then we have, you know, Shizu, who was featured quite heavily on the Konosuba banners. So you probably summoned, if you were playing during Konosuba, you probably summoned for them. You may have pulled this Shizu, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But it's just, you know, a very not great team. So, because the counterattacks, again, we're not a very high damaging team, so all of our real damage is going to come from Vengeance, which, again, we can only stack once a turn. So, it is what it is. So, excuse me again if I don't spend too much time on this team, but it runs essentially the same way as it did for Boss Battle 1. Just like the other Vengeance teams, it's just stack as much as you can. Use as many skills as possible. Use Shizu to, you know, get extra damage when you can, because she does have type advantage still. She is an AoE ult, so obviously we're only fighting a single target, so it's maybe not as good. If you don't have Shizu, you could just bring Diablo again if you have him, or another wind unit, like Wind Milim. I guess you could bring her. She's AoE as well, but whatever. Ow. Just cracked my neck. But yeah, I mean, it's going to run the same way. So we're just going to skip ahead because I don't think you guys want to spend too much time here. So 2 turns left. We're under 1 million damage still. So you can see that, you know, the alternative teams are sticking to a formula. So there we that. And then we have 18 stacks of Vengeance, 119k on that, and that gets us a final score of 49.1. So yeah, there's a few options for you. I know they're not great. I know I sped through a lot of them, but it's a 10-turn fight. And if I actually did this full, like, non-sped up, we'd be here for like an hour. So, yeah. There you go. Again, Jubilee is always, you know, do you have the meta? If not, sorry. At least for Boss Battle 1, there's an alternative strategy which actually scores higher. But let me know if this video helped you guys out or not. Do you guys hate it when I skip around and jump forward in the videos? Also, let me know that, because it'll let me know for next time. But that's it from me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.